We're going to open up another file called Format. And we're going to look at the format. We're going to look at the font group, look at the alignment group, look at the number group, and then we'll do borders and fills. And so all I did on this was I look at these sections here. I just went through and documented every single font command. And in the alignment group, I went through and documented every single command in the alignment group. And then I went through and documented every command in the numbers group. So all I did is I went through each group and spent more time on it. We're not going to refer to the book too much. We're going to focus on using Excel. Let's open up our file. File open. Go to Browse. Go to the data folder. Choose a file called Format. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to do very similar type of a thing that we did in formula section. Is we're going to go to example 1, and we're going to format example 1. And then we're going to go through example 2, and we're going to format example 2. Then we'll go to example 3 and format that. Everyone has a slightly different style, and so we'll look at it. We're going to probably destroy example 1 because we're going to try to apply all the formatting features to it. On example 2, we'll only apply the ones that apply, but we'll try to do the best we can on this. Let's start with our font group. Of course, everybody knows what bold is. And under the font numbers, you can either change the font size or click this little A up arrow and down arrow. So you can make it larger or smaller. You can also change the color. So we want the color to be that color. Now, that pretty much takes care of the font group. That's pretty straightforward. I think everybody knows how to use the font group and use how to change your font sizes. But now we want to jump into the alignment group. That's where there's a little bit more sometimes misunderstood concepts. First one, we want to talk about this thing called merge and center. So we're going to select cell A1 all the way to I1. Now you don't want to select 1 because that selects everything forevermore. If you click on A1 to I1, that's going to be what I want to highlight. And what I want to do is I want to center my exporting good in the middle and center it and merge all the cells together. So there's an option here called merge and center. So when you select those cells, merge and center, and it puts everything in the middle. So all the cells became a single cell. That's probably one of the most used features around. Now if I go in between 1 and 2 and I drag this down a little bit, you see how my exporting it is more bottom justified. So we want to make my exporting well centered both vertically and horizontally. So if you look at these alignment tools here, you've got this left, right, center, and then here you got top, middle, bottom. So we want it to be center-centered. We want my exporting to be centered in the middle, and that way it's not bottom justified. Okay, that is an important little command. Now there's a hidden command that I want to talk about now, and that is that if I want to put sporting goods underneath of Mike's, I can click on the S, right? Double click on the S. Now in Word, if I hit the Enter key in Word, it would put sporting goods on the next line. But when I do this in Excel, it just drops it down to the next cell. So I'm not able to hit the return there to put Mike's sporting goods underneath of Mike's. There is a special way to do it. You don't hit the Enter key to do this. There's a special enter you can use. It's called an Alt Enter. So hold the Alt key down on the keyboard and then press the Enter key. It actually breaks it on the same line. Now this is, a lot of people have wanted to do this, but they never could figure out how to make it work. But it is a special command called Alt Enter. Now, if you show you where this is at in the book, it come down. So there is the indent. Here's the hard return right there. So there's a, so basically, so here's my exporting goods, and it splits it out. It's called the Alt Enter key right there. So the idea of that is that hard return is kind of a special command that allows you to break something within the cell. Okay, so that is a little bit about the alignment group. So a couple more things we need to talk about. We haven't hit them all yet. We're going to go through them all. This is what probably important, this wrap text. So if you come down to Smith S and type the word Stephen, I want to type Stephen Smith. You notice that Stephen kind of goes off. So I don't want to keep making my columns wider. So what I want to do is I want to wrap Stephen Smith onto 2 rows. Now I could hit my Alt-Enter to put that on 2 rows, but I'm going to use a word wrap feature that it only will wrap it if it needs to wrap it. So if I come up to my text wrap up here, and I wrap the text. So I put Stephen Smith on 2 rows. Now if I expand this out a little ways, Stephen Smith will become on 1 row. But if I collapse it, then it goes back. So it only expands if it needs to. So it's possible that there could be a word like brown in. There could be another word right out here that you can't even see it because it's underneath of this field. So that I can select all these and wrap them. And if there's a word out there, it will come out. And so the idea, if you have a very large database that has a lot of names in it, you want to make sure you get all those words out of there. So that is your wrap text feature. Of course, you can use wrap text for sentences. This is another reason for using it. Okay, so we've hit mel merge, we've heard wrap text. Let's take a look at our indenting feature, these little indents right here. So if I highlight Brown, Smith, Wallace, and Adams, and you see sales rep kind of looks like a person. It doesn't look like that's a label over top of these. But if I use this little indent command that indents those, then you can see that it's truly that sales rep is the label, and these are people under the label. So it makes it a little bit more readable, a little bit more understandable. Here's what a lot of people end up doing. They end up clicking in the front of it and pressing a bunch of space bars. And it kind of looks sort of indented, but it's really not. It doesn't work as well. And so you want to use the true indent feature to indent something. To do that, you would select them and you would hit the indent feature to indent it. And I've had people tell me in the class, they're saying, I don't think I have that indent on my computer. I think it's there. You just not be aware of it. So there's a lot of little features sort of behind the scenes that maybe you're not aware of. Hopefully I can touch on those. Okay, we hit them all except for this little AB and an angle on it. So this allows us to take our labels up here and move them off to an angle. Because maybe the label takes up more room than the data, and so we don't want the label to dominate the size of the data. So if I highlight January, February, March, all the way to percent of total, click this little arrow angle, and say I want to angle it counterclockwise. So that drops it on an angle, and you can actually see it. And that where if this field was too wide, then I can reduce the size a little bit because the label is no longer going to be dependent upon the size of the field. That's the idea of this. That's what the angle is for. On the angle, if I select the angles again, and underneath of the alignment group, there's a little arrow button. If I click that little arrow, it says alignment settings, you can go in and actually change the angle if you wanted to. So I can switch it back to no angle if I wanted to, or I can make a more steeper angle or a less steep angle. You can kind of move that around a little bit. So if you want to change the angle a little bit so that it looks a little better, fits a little bit, you can see it more straight on, then you can do that. So that's the angle. So that takes care of all of the alignment group features. And we'll move on to the numbers features, and then when we come back, when we get done with all this, we're going to go on to example 2, and we're going to format again. So we're going to get a lot of practice with this. And we're going to format this way. I'm just sort of destroy it by trying to apply all the formatted features. So we're going to click on the numbers area here, not the percentages, just the numbers. and we click on this little drop-down arrow, and we can either change it to a currency format or an accounting format. The currency format puts it in front of the number. The accounting format puts it in front of the cell. So this is not wide enough for this one, so I got to make that a little wider. If I want to make them symmetric, then I would click on B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, move this to the right a little bit, and that evenly spaced them out. So you can see that the accounting method puts the dollar sign in front of the cell, and the currency method puts it right next to the data. And that's the major difference between the two. So that deals with accounting and currency. Come down to the percent of total. You can select that blank field in the bottom, or there's a 1 there, I think. Okay, now we're going to select that, and now there's 2 ways to do this. You can click on your percentage right there, or you can put the drop down and choose percentage this way. The drop down actually puts in 2 decimal points, and the percentage icon puts 0 decimal points. But I wanted 1 decimal point. So there are some little arrow angles here, this little indent of the decimal points. So I can increase that or decrease that depending on what I'm trying to accomplish. So that would be the decimal point adjuster. If I want to change the decimal point of these numbers here, I can click on that, make them less decimal points or more decimal points, and bring it back like that. So that's essentially how those features work. Now, there are a couple other features that we need to talk about dates a little bit. So I'll put a date 1/1/2000. Put a date in here. The problem with dates is that you can format it as a short date or a long date. If you click on this little arrow underneath of the number group, that you can get other styles. People ask me for the European style, for the year first. And so you can choose different styles if you wish. So that's how you get more information on the dates. The problem with dates is that a lot of times when you type in a date, it turns into a number. And when it turns into a number, it's simply just a format issue. So I can click on that date, format it as a number, and it turns into this really large number. If you end up with a number like that, it's only a format problem. So you just have to format it back to a date style, and it turns into the date. This number is actually rather unique. This number here actually represents, there's a special date that we want to be aware of. One of that date is 1/1/1900. So that's kind of a special date for Microsoft and Excel because everything is based on that date in the system. So that number represents 36,526 days since January 1st, 1900. So, for example, if I were to type in the number 20 in here, and I want to convert 20 to a date, change it to a date, it ends up January 20th, 1900. So these numbers are simply just the number of days from that date. So that's why when you convert them back and forth from a date to a number, it can interpret what that value is. So if it turns into a number, you just have to format it as a date, and that will work just fine. So dates have some unique characteristics like that, and that a little bit beyond what we normally, it's more of a trivia issue to understand that 1900, but the goal of it is so you understand that it's a format issue. You just have to learn to format it, and that's what the format represents. Okay, now, if you look at the other features in here, we've got general, which is when you open up a blank sheet, everything's general by default. And then when you type something in, Excel tries to interpret what it is, and it automatically formats it according to what you type in. You type in a date, it says, oh, I think this is a date, and it puts in the date. So that's general, is how things are done by default. Numbers and currency. Now, under the currency method, you can change a negative number to look differently. Let's go through and select our numbers again and come down and change it to currency, and then go into this little arrow to look at the detailed format of this. See, if I switch over to counting method, it doesn't have this additional information below. But if I choose currency, you can specify what a negative number is going to look like. The accounting method has a built-in default setting for the negative numbers. But in the currency, you can make that choice. So we don't want, sometimes negative numbers aren't noticeable. And so you want to make sure that you can put like a parenthesis around it to understand what a negative number represents. There's your decimal points and there's your thing there. So we talked about currency, date, time. We didn't talk about time as much. Time has some very unique features. I'm going to show you a couple of things. I will only go into more detail if you have an issue with time, and maybe we can talk about that offline or something like this. But I'm going to give you some basic information about time. So essentially what time simply means is time is a fraction of a day. So one day, one represents one day. But a fraction of a day is the time. So if I have 9/24, that is going to be a number that's based on 9/24 of a day, or 9 o'clock. Right, and that turns into a decimal, see? If I take this time and I say equals, I'll say maybe 3 divided by 20, oh, not 3, but 15. See, so 15 divided by 24. That's going to be a fraction that's going to be based on the 3 o'clock. So it's from 9 to 3 is the idea. And that's the decimal number there. If I subtract those decimal numbers, I say equals the 3 o'clock minus the 9 o'clock, that ends up being a 0.25. And that's exactly right, because why? It's a quarter of a day. From 9 to 3 is 6 hours. So that's how that works. And then you think, well, wait a minute, I don't want to see 25. I want to see 6 hours. So you just take that 0.25 and you convert it over to a time, and it puts the 6 hours in there. And sometimes you might want to change it so that it doesn't show that PM and AM in there. So there's my 6 there. And so essentially, if I take 9 o'clock, 9:00 AM, and I take 3:00 PM, we have to make sure that these are formatted as a date, as a time field. There's time. This is going to be a time here. If I subtract those two and I say equals 3 o'clock minus 9 o'clock, that gives you 6 hours. And if you don't want that AM to stay in there, then you can switch it over to a format that doesn't include that number. So essentially, you can either do it from the decimal perspective or from a time perspective. But the time is represented by a number, a decimal number. So that's all it is. So I'm just trying to give you some basic ideas of using time, how to manipulate time. Because some people get a little confused with that. Okay, highlight this data area again. And come down to the drop down. There's fraction, scientific method, there's text, and there's an option bottom called more number formats. There's one here called special, which simply means if you've got a zip code or a phone number or a social security number you're going to put in, it's a 10-digit number, you can format it so it will put the parentheses and the dashes at the right place. So that's the idea behind that. You can format with these special formats here. There's another one called custom, which is a little bit bizarre, but this has all this code in here. But these are some special formatting techniques that Excel has provided. So each one of these is a different format style. This is the code sort of behind the scenes that formats these things. And so that's essentially the currency method. Highlight your data area again. And now we can also look in conditional formatting. So say, for example, none of these numbers can go beyond a certain amount, or maybe we want to do just January, February, March, because this is the data input area. These are all calculations. So say, for example, we want to identify things that are greater than 2,000. So I can go to my conditional format. It says highlight cells rules. If it's greater than, then type in 2,000, and we can turn it green if it's greater than 2,000. So the conditional format is another tool we might want to use to format the areas. So that takes care of a lot of that information in the conditional formatting. There's two more buttons we need to talk about. One is the borders and the bucket. So with the bucket, I want to be able to shade my fields. So we're going to use the adjacent selection, the thing we talked about earlier today. Select this first area, hold the control key down, and then highlight the other columns. Now when I choose my little paint bucket, it's actually going to format it all at the same time. So you can highlight multiple columns all over the place, and you can format those columns in that manner. So that's the idea of paint bucket. And I used adjacent selection to do that. So now we're going to actually go through the border feature. So let's highlight everything. There were a couple of commands we could use to do everything. Click in the middle, do a Control A. That does everything. But it actually did this. I didn't want that to be part of it. So I could click on A2, hold the Shift key down, and then click on the last one, and that highlights everything between the two. So several ways to select everything. Then you choose your border drop-down and say, I want to choose all borders, and that highlights all borders. Now we're going to go through this again in a minute, so we'll have a chance to do this all over again. Now, I also want to put what's called a thick outside border. So first you choose all borders, then you go back again a second time and choose a thick outside border. It keeps the borders, but it puts a thicker outside border there. See that? I can also select this data area in the middle here and put a thick border around that. So now I have a thick one around the outside, a thick one around my data area. But now this is the most important element that I want to get across. So if you haven't done it, make sure you do this. I want to put a real solid thick line above the total row, but there's no format, general format available for me. So I'm going to highlight my total row, not 7. You want to click on the word total and just highlight it like this. So we're going to highlight, and we're going to put a real super thick line above that area. Go to your drop down. Go down, it says more borders. And choose your thick line and apply it to the top edge of that selected area. And so this little box here represents the selected area. That top edge of that selected area represents the top edge of that. You can also change the color of the solid line. Click out of it to see it, and there's my solid line. Let's do it one more time, because now what I want to do is I want to separate my data area from my formulas. So I'm going to select the total cells all the way down to there, and I want to put a thick line on the left side of that field so I have a nice solid line right there. So I go to my more borders, click on the thick line, and apply that to the left edge of that selected area. And this is how you customize your borders. So if you need to have a thick line at a specific point to show some kind of separation, then this is the way it would work. And there's my thick line. As there's actually just one more formatting feature that I don't have an example for, but I need to show you anyways. So if I click on Stephen Smith right here, and I want to format maybe one of these numbers with that format style, there is this option called Format Painter. So if I click on the Format Painter, I can paint that color into that position. Now, this doesn't really make sense, but I'm just doing this for exercise purposes. The real advantage of the Format Painter is if you double-click on the Format Painter, I can now paint multiple times. If you single-click on the Format Painter, you can only format paint once. So you have to format paint multiple times. That is the idea of the Format Painter. I'm going to go through another example of that. But I wanted to at least run through all of the formatting features, even if it didn't make sense. Let's go over to example 2. Now, example 2 is very similar to the previous example. So we're going to do some merge ups here. We're going to do some indenting here. We're going to do some angles. And we're going to do some formatting of all this. So the idea is to start off with, let's just kind of start at the top, and let's do our merge and center. So you can highlight cells A1 through I1, and you can use your merge and center to merge it together. So we're going to go through this again, so you can see how this fits together. I want to make it bold, bigger, and I want it to be centered both vertically and horizontally. Where's that command at? It's right there. So the idea is that get familiar with the menu system, because that's where you're going to go first to find the answers. Once you know you can do this capability, then it's just a matter of figuring out where the button is. And in some cases, you might have to go up and highlight them this way. So now, that's the idea. What else can we do? Well, I'll probably make my regional cells, just make that bold and put that in the corner there, it's fine. Well, what else can I do at this point? I can put some indenting here. Let's try that one. So if I highlight northern, southern, western, and central, I can click my little arrows to increase the indent. So that is the indent feature. We can put these on angles if you want. Select all these. And then put the little angle button and angle it counterclockwise. Then we also have to apply some currency or accounting method to the numbers. So we're going to do a little bit of number formatting. So angle counterclockwise. Let's put some number formatting down here. I hope I'm not going too fast. I'm just sort of letting you just play with it too. So I'm giving you a chance to just kind of go in and make little changes, try what features you're looking for. You can model mine and match mine if you like and try to find the command for it. Or you could, if you have a question you want to ask, where's this command at? Where's that command? We can do that. I'm going to put my currency format out here. And that actually fit in there just right. If you get pound signs, that means you've got to make your columns a little wider. Now, I have all these zeros. I don't really need decimal points on any of this. So I'm going to go to my decimal point adjuster and take those decimal points off. So I wanted the $ format, but the decimal points on. So I can take that off. So, are we any questions on that, or you doing all right? How are we doing? Andrew, you doing all right?
I do have a quick question. Quick question. So on my example too, you know how we did a hard return for the night sporting goods on top?
Yep.
So mine, yep. So how do you undo that? How do you make it one line again?
I would most likely, the easiest way to do it would be to come over and click on it and see this little button that says clear. You want to choose that drop down there and just say clear the format out. And that will just remove it. I believe you can actually click on it and actually do a backspace and it should delete it. But oftentimes I'll just simply say clear it out. It starts over again. Because there could be other things you want to remove out of there too.
Cool, thank you.
So the other way to go about doing that, if you did put this in here, see it's wrapping for some reason. See, it's wrapping text. I won't do that. So if I did my hard return like this, but I believe you can just click on it and just backspace it like this. Go back and backspace it so that you kind of get rid of it with the backspace key. So I was able to get rid of it with the backspace key. In this case, it looks like it wrapped the text. See, it wrapped it automatically. So that was the other way possibility you could use.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, now we're going to do some shading, some borders, and maybe some conditional format. So we're going to select this area, hold the control key down, select this area, and we're going to shade this all at once. So we can put it as maybe a blue shade, it'd be fine. And then we can highlight the whole thing and put some borders around there. All borders. And those thick borders are kind of nice. They give it a little bit better boundary. There's my thick outside border. There's another thick border. And if you want to put that thick one over the total, I can select the total row. Go down where it says more borders. Choose the thick line. Apply that to the top edge. So that's essentially how you do this. And you can format whatever colors you want. I would stay away from pink, pea green, and orange. I just don't like the colors. I mean, I think they're not really professional looking, but other than that, you can do whatever you want. Just use your colors. What you want to be careful of, though, is when you do your shading, you want to make sure you don't choose a button that's too dark. This first row is sometimes a little bit too dark up here. It's too dark sometimes. So this is even sometimes too dark, but the second row is pretty good. The third row gets too dark again. So you want to make sure that and also what I mean by too dark is that you won't be able to read it. If it's too light, then it may not even come out on the printer. On a black and white printer, you won't even see the format. It will just be white. So you want it to be too light or too dark. You want to make sure that it's just right. If I click on Northern and I clear out my format out of there, so Northern doesn't have the format anymore. If I want to add that format, I can use my format painter to put it back. So I click on the Southern port, hit the format painter, and paint Northern, and so I can format it back this way. So that is some of the things we can do. If you want to put in some conditional formatting in here, you can click on that, choose your conditional formatting, and highlight it if it reaches a certain threshold. So I'm going to turn it maybe a certain color. I can turn it green or yellow if it's above maybe 50,000.
So on that conditional formatting, what if we go and we add a row after we do the conditional formatting?
I'm going to do right in the middle. I can do one right here, see what happens. The question is it going to format it? It inherited it. But what if I did it on right here, if I inserted a row that way? It looks like it inherited it. See?
So what if you do it in between the 4 and the 5?
Between the 4 and the 5.
Between, right yeah, right there. Yeah.
There. To insert. Looks like it didn't. It took the one above.
Mm,
It inherited the format from above.
okay.
If I clicked here and just did insert this way, see, it still inherited the one above.
Okay.
So what you'd have to do is you'd have to move it down, do it here, and then move them around or something. Delete that. So if you kind of understand what these things are doing, what the format is designed for, then you might have to work around and figure out how to make it work. So I had somebody one time tell me that they thought that Excel was designed by left-thinking people. And I said, I don't know what a left thinker is, but we better learn what left thinkers, how they think. Okay? Because we have to figure out how the program is designed and use it the way it was designed to be used, not the way we want it to work. So you have to kind of learn these little problems, these little things, and kind of learn to work around them. How are we doing? Any questions on this, or can we move on to another one? Again, lots of practice, right? All right, I'm going to go on to example 3. Now, there's something unique I want to do with example 3, and then I'm going to sort of turn it over to you and let you do whatever you want. But see this first quarter? I want that to be a label that's sort of written on the side here, just as a side label of this item. To do that, we're going to have to merge the cells together and then flip it on the right side. So we're going to highlight these cells first. Don't select my exporting as just first quarter down to 16. We're going to merge those cells together, and then we're going to flip it. And we're going to flip it called rotate text up. So you want to merge it together first, and then keep it selected. Go to your arrow, your AB arrow, and change it to a rotate text up, which will flip it on its side, and then you can center it, make it bigger, and sort of a side label. So I'll rotate text up, make it centered, bold, and bigger. So I did that by using this option called rotate text up. So that's kind of what I wanted to do first. The rest is pretty much what we've been doing. So it's just a matter of applying the principles that we discussed in the class. The only unique thing about this was this first quarter that I wanted to show you. So I'm going to take my exporting goods and center that. Merge and center. Maybe bigger and bold. So it's a major label. I want to indent these a little bit. So they're indented. Now I'm going to put some shading up here, so I'll highlight that. Hold the control key down and select this. And I'm going to apply a shade to this. So I'll do a little purple shade. Put some numbers. Fix our percent of total, or percentages. And we can apply some conditional format. So this is all the same old that we've been doing. So I'm going to highlight all these cells, and I want to put a currency in there, or an accounting method. I'll put accounting this time. A couple of pound signs, so that indicated that there's no room. So I would just highlight these cells on the top with my column manipulation, move them over a little bit to give them a little bit more room, and that spaces them out. So now we're going to go through and do our percentages. Now you can either click on this percentage button, that doesn't put any decimal points, or you click the drop down, but I want to add 1 decimal point to it. So we show that on there. Maybe the 100% I don't want to have 1 decimal point. I want to bring that back and just bring this one back 1. So I just want to set 100% on that one. But these I want to show the sub percentage, because I want to know if it's closer to the next percentage or not. 6.9 is basically 7%. So that's the idea of that. Now we're also going to go through and put some borders out there. And these are things we've just covered a few minutes ago. So I'm assuming you at least know where the borders are. Say all borders. My thick border. And there's a nice little thick border around there. Nice. I might want to put in a thick border here and put some thicker lines between total cells and percentages. I'll put a thick one that way. I'll select this total and put a thick one on that one. That gives me a little more of a solid line in between the total cells and the percentage, where these won't have any thick line between them. I could select my total row and put a thick line on that one, but it doesn't look as bold as I'd like it to look. Maybe I want to have a super, super bold line. And that's why I said that's why I go into the customization of this field and make it really thick. Maybe I'll change the color too, maybe to a dark purple. Dark purple, make a real thick line, apply that to the top edge. Say okay. Now there's my super thick purple line. So that's the idea. Now, are there any questions about, kind of gone through it a couple of times, so you kind of know what's up there, how it works, and you can kind of see how that all fits together. So let's move on, if that's okay with everybody. Is everybody ready to move on? Do you have any questions at this point?
I'm good.
Good. All right, hope you're catching on to this. Go to example 4. Now this is a much different sheet than what we've dealt with other sheets. So with this one, I want it to be very uniform, but not too dominant. So what I want to do is I want to focus people's attention onto this quarter value here. And then this is sort of secondary. If they need more data, they can look at that. So I'm going to select this quarter 1, highlight it, and we're going to put a little shade on that. So let's put a little, maybe a blue shade. Now I'm only going to work on quarter 1. I'm not going to work on all the other quarters. I'm only going to work on quarter 1. So what I want to do is I want to take this information and put a thick outside border around that. Should be a thick outside border. And on this one, I'm going to put all borders. All right, so what I did is I put all borders on this one. I did not want to bring this together. I wanted to put a real thin one, but just an outside border there. So that's all I want to do is I want to format this. So go through it and just make it look, so this is the dominant part of the field. So as soon as everybody gets done with that, wait a minute till you get it all done. Something like that. It doesn't have to be exactly what I'm doing, but you're going to format one little quarter at a time. And then when you're done, you can click on that quarter, highlight the quarter, and we're going to use the format painter to paint it across. So we're going to double click on the format painter, and we're going to click on the first field of April here. Boom. You see, I can actually take this and format it and copy that format to the other areas. Now, oftentimes what people do, I've seen people do, is they accidentally click on the wrong spot, and it does something like this. So when you want to get out of this format painter, you click on the format painter or hit the escape key. So I just sort of messed up my format here. See that? So again, what I would do is I would highlight that area. I would go up to my clear, and I'd clear that format out. And then I would go back and use my format painter to paint it again. So oftentimes if you hit the wrong format, you can clear out that format go to any other format, and then paint the format again. Paint it again, so it kind of refixes that. Now, if you think about this a little bit, I could actually select District 1 and give that a little blue shade. And then I can select District 1, highlight that entire district, double click on the Format Painter, and click on District 2, District 3, District 4, District 5, District 6. So I could actually take that format and apply it to all the other sheets. Click on your Format Painter to turn it off. So you see what I'm doing is when you look at this sheet, the first thing you focus your attention on is quarter 1. Now I might want to format quarter 1 to also be the same format style. So I can use my Format Painter to click on this field here, and then paint that up so it looks like it belongs. Format Painter, do quarter 2. So this is an exercise to really look at the Format Painter as a way to make it much faster to move it along. So it looks like you've done a lot of work, but you really did one full section at a time, and you used the Format Painter to propagate that along. And so that is what formatting is all about. So the question is, do you have enough skills to be able to format something? You can format these, so you can do that. Now, what I suggest you do is, when you focus on formulas and functions, my exercise file is excellent. You should go back and practice your formulas and files. But when you practice formatting, what I suggest you do is come over to your sheet and actually open up one of your files. And of course, save it off as a different name, but then I would highlight your sheet, whatever sheet you're using, and I would clear the format out. Now, the reason why is then you go back and reformat. These are the things you're going to be working with. So you want to practice on something you're going to be working with in the future. So you can go through and clear out a sheet if you want to practice formatting on a sheet that you use or a sheet that is very popular or used. And then you can go back and clear that out, and then you can reformat it based on what you're looking for. As a matter of fact, you could even go to this example here, make a copy of it by holding the Control key down, making a quick copy of it. And now I can actually apply that to the copy rather than applying it to the original. And then when you're done, you can right-click on the copy and delete it or hide it. So there's a couple of examples of formatting capabilities. On example 5, this is where we could actually use this and format these sheets first. And then we use our Format Painter and simply paint that format to the second quarter and the third quarter and the fourth quarter. So that's a Format Painter feature.